Welcome in for another episode of the Silver and Blue Podcast. I'm your host, Nate Sanchez. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, Corey Douglas. Corey, we're heading into the bye week. We're 6-2, and frankly, it's hard to complain about that.
Yeah, I mean, all things considered, considering some of the things the Cowboys have had to overcome, this first half of the season, 6-2, second place in the division, thanks to the Giants finally losing a game. Been pretty good. And if we can just get Philly to lose a game in this back half, this home stretch leading into Christmas Eve, this thing could really turn real. I mean, if you look at the NFC standings right now, they're pretty much upside down from kind of where we thought they would be, which is kind of motivating myself to be motivated for the Cowboys to go out and kind of make another move to get a receiver in here to really try to push this thing over the top.
Yeah, there's been some rumors that they've been asking around about receivers. I think there's some other needs that they have. Like, I really think they could use another corner. But I think receivers probably the biggest need, but they're just a little thin at corner. There's not, especially with Jordan Lewis gone for the year, there's not much depth there anymore. I mean, like if Diggs goes down, you're really sweating it at corner. Or even if Anthony Brown went down, you're really sweating it, and you're starting to get down to Kelvin Joseph and Nashawn Wright, who just appear to be non-contributors. So that's kind of where things are at currently. But we got a win to talk about. The Cowboys beat the Bears 49-29. Blew their doors off from the jump. The Bears kind of got back into it, made it a little bit of a game, but then the Cowboys reasserted themselves. It was a little sweaty for maybe a couple minutes. Then Dak took them 75 yards down the field in, I think, like 2 minutes. And it was back to a 2-possession lead for the rest of the game, or they were up multiple possessions the rest of the game. We usually start with the defense, but I think we need to start with the offense today, because the offense, I mean, this was by far their best performance of the year. This was the most points one team has scored in a single game all year. And Dak looked surgical yesterday. It was one of his better performances in the last couple years. I mean, he was firing on all cylinders. His one interception was just a complete heat check where he had just been, I believe I saw a stat on Twitter. He had a CPOE of like 20.8 at the time of his interception. So it was a little bit of a heat check that, he needs to rein that in sometimes. But it was pretty impressive. And, we'll talk about Tony Pollard and everything, but I do think this was the best Dak has looked in a really, really long time.
Yeah, and I think when you're looking at Dak's performance, obviously he started out like 10 of 11, and they were marching down the field, pretty easily on the Bears defense. But the throw that he made to CD Lamb for his touchdown was a dart.
Yeah.
And that was something that we hadn't really just seen Dak Prescott letting the ball go like that in such a long time. So it was like once he made that throw, I was like, okay, this is like first half of last year, Dak, and we're here. And I think a lot of people, or I've seen a lot of conversation about, it was the Bears defense, yada yada yada. But I mean, for him to look like that, I don't care who it was against, because the Bears, they're up front, they're not very good, but in the secondary, they do have some talented players back there. And Eddie Jackson, speaking of the pick that he threw, that was Eddie Jackson making that play. So, I mean, just seeing Dak Prescott look like that, 21-27, 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, the pick, only got sacked once, which was huge. But yeah, I was thrilled with the way Dak Prescott played yesterday.
Yeah, and one thing that really stuck out to me was they used his legs a lot. I believe he finished, I want to say, gun to my head, I don't have the stats in front of me. I want to say it was like 6 carries for 30 something yards and a touchdown.
5 for 34.
Yeah, 5 for 34. Okay, I was close. But yeah, I thought they really utilized his legs, which is something we haven't really seen them do all that much since his ankle injury. And it was really encouraging to see. He seemed very confident, not very worried about the injuries, the way he was running. He had that QB sneak that he checked into that I almost accidentally went for like 25 yards. But yeah, I feel like they utilized his legs a lot yesterday. That was really good to see. He was just really accurate all over the field, just darts all over the field. He was really impressive. And I think, basic counting stats, 250 yards is not ideal, but I mean, most of that came in the first half. In the second half, they just leaned on the run game, and they let Tony Pollard they let Tony Pollard go to work, and go to work he did. But one more Dak stat. Yesterday, Dak was second in the league in EPA per play. He was second in CPOE, and I'm looking at these numbers, and then he was second in success rate through the air. I mean, he was damn impressive yesterday, and everything checked out. I believe his QBR, he had the highest QBR of the week. He got a PFF grade of like 91, I believe. He was just really impressive, really sharp. And you know, in the second half, they leaned on the run game a little more, and man, we finally got to see Tony Pollard unleashed without Zeke.
Yeah, real quick before I want to just stay on Dak just real quick
Yeah.
because you mentioned him running. And you mentioned the numbers, and it's funny because we did have a slight scare with him getting his hand stepped on, his non-throwing hand stepped on there for a second. And the reason it was thought of that is because I thought of CeeDee Lamb's quote after the game about Dak running, and he said, "quote I'm not a fan of that. I'm not, and I'll be first to say that. I mean, it was great that we got the first down, but it's just I don't know what's going to happen. I have all the faith in my QB, so end quote." CeeDee Lamb, not a fan of Dak Prescott running the ball. But then, like you said, going on to continue talking about Tony Pollard, I mean, what can you say? I mean, I believe it was his second touchdown run where he made a couple of disgusting cuts that just made it was just ridiculous. It's stuff that we haven't.
The cut on past Eddie Jackson on the 7-yard run was just ridiculous.
It was insane, like the way his shiftiness, agility, speed. And then one thing I took from a Zeke quote is that because I think a lot have this perception that Tony Pollard is kind of a finesse guy, and he can lower the shoulder a little bit too now on you. And I think some of the Bears people in the secondary, I think they kind of found that out yesterday the hard way. But no, Tony Pollard, 14 carries, 131 yards, 3 touchdowns. His longest was 54 yards. And I mean, it was exciting to see.
Oh, absolutely. And I did see a number today from Seth Walder per Next Gen Stats, rushing yards over expectation, which if you don't know, it's basically a stat that calculates, expected rush yards based on, how the play is blocked up and whatnot, because running backs are, to a pretty high degree, a product of their environment, the production they get. Tony Pollard, rush yards over expectation, 192 yards over expectation on 81 carries this year. Ezekiel Elliott, negative 30 rushing yards over expectation on 109 carries. And so, this has turned into a conversation. And Jerry said after the game, Zeke's RB1, there's no controversy. And it's frustrating because this has, similar to the Dak rush thing, this has kind of turned into a controversy where it shouldn't really be a controversy. Like, no one is saying don't give Zeke a role. Zeke needs a role, and he's he can bring some value to this offense, but there's no question who the more effective, explosive runner is, and it's Tony Pollard. And so I just think Zeke definitely needs a role, but there's no way that these carries should be split 50-50. Or I want to say this year it's been like 60-40-ish. Zeke, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it should be much closer, 50-50, maybe even 60-40 to Pollard, and let Zeke get the short yard work as well. It's just, it's clear what's going on here, that Pollard is by far the more effective back. And I just hate that Jerry's kind of turned into this thing where now it's Zeke or Pollard. It's like, there's nothing wrong with having 2 great running backs, guys. Like, there's nothing wrong with having 2 great running backs. And, Pollard, I think, is, again, definitely better and more effective, but that's not to say that Zeke doesn't play a very helpful role in this offense.
Yeah, and I think one thing this game kind of showed, or I think because I've been in the boat where I'm saying Zeke's going to be back, they're going to figure it out somehow, some way. Where I still kind of feel that way after yesterday's game, because obviously one game's not going to determine the future of the franchise and the running back position. But I do kind of wonder what the price tag is going to be for Tony Pollard, because if the Cowboys are going to want to stick him around, I can't imagine they're going to do so at a high number along with keeping Zeke. And are they going to match another team's offer that, they might be willing to pay Tony Pollard? So I do think yesterday kind of made that interesting, because now it's on film. Every team in the league saw that, and I'm sure obviously they're aware of who Tony Pollard is, who he's been, and what type of player he is. But I was thinking about that a little bit yesterday as Tony Pollard was going crazy.
Oh yeah, he definitely made himself some money, and like you're saying, I mean, it's going to be an interesting decision with basically the salary cap with the way it's set up with Zeke's contract is they can save $5 million by cutting Zeke this offseason. This is their first chance to get out of that contract. They'd save $5 million. I believe would carry, I want to say, an $11 million dead cap hit with Zeke, but they would still save $5 million. Or they could make Zeke a post June 1st designated post June 1st cut and save $11 million, and then see how the chips fall with Pollard. I'm just not a big fan of paying running backs, but the thing with Pollard is he has like a lot of running backs when they come at the end of the rookie deal, they have a lot of mileage on their tires. Pollard doesn't have enough mileage because they haven't used him enough, and he didn't get a whole lot of touches at Memphis either. Pollard is a young 26, and so again, I'm not a huge fan of giving big contracts to running backs, but I do think they need to be paid to a certain degree. Just massive contracts that hinder you are not good. I think Pollard maybe deserves somewhere in that to $10 million range that I could maybe get behind. I'm not a big fan of investing a lot of money into the running back position, but it's going to be interesting what they do with Zeke's contract with Pollard. Maybe they draft a guy, bring a day 2 guy in, and he partners up with Pollard and they get rid of Zeke. I don't know, but in the here and now, this is a pretty awesome tandem they have going in the backfield because Pollard has demonstrated his value, and there's no question about that. But and Zeke has been, he's, for all this conversation, Zeke has been really solid this year, and it's been some of the best football he's played. I mean, the last time we saw Zeke play a full game because he got hurt against the Lions, he was terrific against the Eagles. So I just think they complement each other really well. This is probably the last year they're going to have both of them, whether it's one or the other or neither, I don't know, but they just complement each other really well. And this shouldn't be a Pollard versus Zeke thing. This should be a how can we best use these two to complement each other because their skill sets complement each other pretty well. And Pollard, again, he deserves a whole lot of praise for how he did yesterday. I mean, he's just so explosive and really fun to watch. He's by far the best home run hitter for Dallas. I want to say, I forget how many exactly plays it is, but I believe he's responsible for like 4 of the 5 longest plays Dallas has from scrimmage this year. It might be more than that. I forget what it was. I saw it earlier today, but either way, he's your most explosive weapon, and he needs to be used as such. And I hope that yesterday, that they kind of saw firsthand, and there's the proof is in the pudding. Like you saw what he did yesterday when you give him, a decent amount of touches, and I hope they continue to use him going forward at a rate that he should be being used.
Absolutely. And I mean, this is like you say, it's not a problem. It's just another playmaker that this offense has in a season where we came into the season questioning, all right, where are the playmakers, especially on the outside at receiver, and who's going to step up? And now we have another guy, or, we've had this guy. It's just finding ways to use him. And I thought some of the play calling yesterday was way more creative
Yes.
than even we got Turpin on a little I guess jet sweep toss, whatever that. I guess it was a toss play because he came in motion and got it, and picked up what was it, 11 yards. And he was just so fast. So I definitely think that the play calling enhanced the performance as well. Kellen Moore kind of got in his bag a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. And I do think, this is not, again, I don't want this to be misconstrued as an anti-Zeke thing, but I do think some of that has to do with the fact that Zeke wasn't out. And, we know, and we've heard that the calls coming from inside the house in terms of feeding Zeke and making sure he gets his touches and he's always on the field. We saw what this offense and the play calling can look like whenever, they're not able to force Zeke into the offense. And, again, this is not like a Kellen Moore thing. This is a front office thing where we know they are, forcing Zeke onto the field. They want their money on the field. They want their big back on the field. And, that's just a massive flaw of the front office, but we've talked about that extensively. But it was kind of interesting to see how much more the offense opened up and how much more creative they got without Zeke on the field. Not because Zeke isn't effective, but they're a lot more motion, just a lot less just hammering it between the tackles to Zeke for 2 or 3 yards. It's just the offense was opened up a lot more whenever they didn't have the whole, front office forcing Zeke onto the offense, cloud hanging over things, because They looked really sharp, and we haven't even mentioned the offensive line or the receivers. The offensive line was terrific. I think Dak, like you mentioned, Dak was only sacked once. They were moving people off the ball all game. Jason Peters played a lot better, and he came in when McGovern got hurt. Zach Martin was moving people. Zach Martin basically had a police escort for Pollard on his 54-yard run for touchdown. That was just a thing of beauty. I mean, the offensive line was really solid yesterday. Really, really solid, and it was really good to see. As it feels like they took a little bit of a step.
Yeah, I definitely think the Bears matchup kind of perfectly aligned for a great performance for this offensive line. Like you mentioned, you didn't really hear any of too many penalties on the offensive line. Like you said, they were moving bodies, they were giving Dak time. I mean, it was just a feast for the Cowboys offense, and just in general. And a lot of that had to do was on the shoulders of the offensive line blocking and making sure that they, gave Dak a clean pocket, making sure they were setting up those holes. I mean, there was one of those runs. I don't think it went for the touchdown, but I mean, Tony Pollard was basically 10 yards up the field before he even got touched. So
I think I
it
know.
was
I think
just,
I know what play you're talking about. Was it the
yeah, because
play
they
that Jeff Schwartz posted on Twitter where it was like a 20-yard run to the left? It was like an outside zone to the left. Is that?
yes,
Yep.
yes,
And
that's the one.
you could
It
have
was
driven
just
a
like,
truck through that hole. You could have driven a truck
yes.
through there.
And then because even I remember it watching the game, they showed it from like a different angle from maybe like the end zone view, and you just saw him just. I mean, it was just wide, like you said, a truck. I mean, an 18-wheeler thing. So definitely shout out to the offensive line, and this Tyron Smith conversation keeps coming up, and they keep saying that. At least Stephen Jones said today that he's about 3 or 4 weeks out. They haven't really discussed it a lot, but he imagines their top 5 conversation for later down the road, but it's going to be interesting with the offensive line kind of gain some momentum there.
Yeah, I almost have like kind of forgotten about Tyron Smith this year, if I'm being honest. And it's not because Tyler Smith has been so great. I forget about Tyron. It's just the Tyron thing happened so long ago, and so much has happened since that injury. That here we are, and yeah, it was really. I was surprised to hear that update. I guess they said kind of December all along was the Tyron Smith timeline. So I'm guessing it's October 31st. I'm guessing it's he'll miss 4, maybe 5 more games, and he comes back for the last 3, 4 regular season games, and they tune him up. And that would be huge if Tyron Smith's able to come back healthy, and you can kick Tyler Smith into guard. You're cooking with gas on this offensive line.
Absolutely.
With Tyler Smith has struggled most in pass pro and like speed on the outside. If you just move him onto the inside where he's close quarters and he can get to mauling people in the run game, which is what he does best, I would be really excited about Tyler Smith, the left guard. Again, long term, he's your left tackle of the future, and probably next year he's your starting left tackle. But as far as your best 5, if you're going to go for it in the 2022 season, Tyron Smith, the left tackle, Tyler Smith at left guard, like was originally the plan, is the best way to go forward. And then Jason Peters is your backup tackle. Yeah, I hadn't really considered the idea of Tyron Smith coming back, just because I just kind of assumed he's probably done for the year. But yeah, that was a really encouraging update, and the offensive line deserves a lot of credit. I believe Tyler Biadasz was the second highest graded offensive player for Dallas yesterday. He was really good. But yeah, the offensive line was moving people yesterday. Let me pull up the numbers here. I thought yesterday was a really clean day from the receivers. I thought CeeDee Lamb had a really nice day. Like you mentioned, yeah, that touchdown catch. I believe he finished with like 75 yards. I thought yesterday was the best Michael Gallup's looked in a little while. He's been really quiet lately and just hasn't seemed quite right. Michael Gallup finished with 4 catches for 49 yards. He's getting better and better, and I really think that this bye week, we'll talk about this more when we get into the defense, because the defense is significantly more banged up than the offense. But I really think this bye week is coming at a good time, especially for Gallup. But yeah, honestly, we've talked extensively about the importance of Dak to Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz, 6 catches, 74 yards yesterday. He's come alive. He's looking a lot healthier, and with Dak back in the fold, the passing game is starting to hum a little bit. I'm really excited about where this passing game can go, especially we'll see what happens in the next 18 hours or so. If they go and get a receiver. We'll see what happens at the trade deadline. But yesterday was by far the best day for the passing offense all year. And I don't think it's very close.
Yeah, I think one thing I noticed in yesterday's game was they made a concerted effort to get Gallup going early. I believe
Yes.
two or three of his catches came very early on the first possession of the game on those slants, which is one of Gallup's best routes, along with I don't think he's quite there yet, but getting him going early was very. And then Dalton Schultz, I got to hand it to him because these tight ends behind him, Ferguson,
Mhm.
for his job. And I like the way they got him going a little bit more down the field and not just these kind of comeback routes where he's just sitting in the middle of the field, well short of first down yardage. It kind of got him up the field, got him up the seams. And, I think that speaks to his health, but it also speaks to the play calling that we were talking about earlier.
Yep.
Where I think Kellen Moore he was drawing some stuff up yesterday. I don't know if it was just the film he saw on the Bears defense where some things that they could exploit kind of showed those type of things and just kind of fell into the Cowboys' strengths or what. But I was definitely encouraged with that. I mean, 74 yards for Dalton Schultz. I mean, it's not every time that we get 6 catches for 74 yards with him, with his longest being 30 yards.
Absolutely. And, I just think they stayed on schedule. Let me look at the penalties here. Dallas only had 6 penalties for 41 yards. That's still not great, but it's less than we've seen from them. And I thought they stayed on schedule. They stayed out of 3rd and long situations, and they just let Dak move the chains. They finished 9 for 11 on 3rd down. And I believe, I could be wrong in this, I think they converted their first 6 3rd down attempts. They were just really sharp all across the board. Again, we talked about at the beginning, that was the best Dax looked all year. And they were able to, and we're getting a comment in from Tyler, Kellen Moore needs to call games like that. That was a perfect game plan. Well, almost. Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. And honestly, with these play calls he was making, I was really happy with the use of play action, a lot of pre-snap motion. And again, maybe it has something to do with no Zeke in there, and he didn't feel as pressured to get Zeke the ball. Just because we know that, like we said, that call comes in from the front office to make sure Zeke gets the ball. But I thought Kellen Moore was terrific yesterday. Mixing, like I said, play action, pre-snap motion, the way he deployed Pollard, the way he got Dak some good throws in space. And again, it helps when Dak plays the way he plays. But yeah, I thought this was Kellen Moore's best game of the season as well. And again, it was the offense's best game of the season as a whole.
And just one last note on the offense, take defense is just looking at time of possession, because the main thing, a lot of the conversation with running the ball and controlling the clock and things like that nature. The Cowboys scored 49 points yesterday and had the ball for less than 24 minutes. They had the ball for 23 minutes and 56 seconds exactly. So it just shows how efficient the Cowboys offense was. And just like you said, when they got it to one possession, they went back down the field in 2 minutes and scored. I mean, they were just doing whatever they wanted on this defense. And, when you don't commit those costly drive killing penalties, this is kind of what that offense can look like with your quarterback one out there.
Absolutely. And, looking at Dak's number, and, we've been kind of looking at their play action usage, all year. And it's been up and down. But we had been hoping that when Dak comes back, they stick to that play action that works so well with Cooper Rush. And yesterday, looking at the PFF box score, play action, they ran on 46% of his dropbacks. On those dropbacks, he was 9 of 12 for 110 yards, 9.2 yards per attempt, and 2 touchdowns. I mean, he was terrific out of play action as always. But yeah, Dak was surgical. The offense was surgical. Hard to complain about them. But yeah, let's get into the defense. Mixed bag, but they did their job. And Tyler's just dropped another comment. The roughing call was BS. Yeah, and I do think that roughing call kind of was a massive turning point in making this game remotely close. Just in terms of
they score like the next play or like the
yeah. So think about where we were at that point. It's 28-7 Dallas. Chauncey Golston hits Justin Fields directly in the chest, doesn't touch his helmet. Ball goes up in the air. Trevon Diggs picks it off. Dallas is about to get the ball with about a minute and a half or so. I think there was left in the half, maybe less. But it's about to be Dallas ball 28-7. They call that roughing call, and they turn around and Kelvin Joseph gives up I believe it was Joseph, gives up a touchdown the next play to N'Keal Harry. And so 28-14, you're still fine. And then, there's, I think, 50 seconds left, and Dak just forces one downfield. It was a heat check type throw. And Eddie Jackson picks it off, and then they get a field goal, and it's 28-17. And I just don't think Dak is that aggressive if they have the ball coming off the pick. I think that was almost damn near a 10-point play. I mean, Dak would have had the ball near midfield. He's not going to force it down the field like he did. That was a really, really massive call. And it's a good point, Tyler. I think that play was more impactful than just taking away an interception. I think it almost was a domino effect into Dak's interception as well. Again, not excusing the throw by Dak, but Dak isn't going to feel the need to be that aggressive if he's getting the ball 1st and 10 near midfield. So I thought that was a really, really massive call that helped bring Chicago back into the game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have any more to add to that. It was a huge play. And I mean, I guess by the letter of the law, the roughing the passer thing, kind of is what it is at the point. It's a horrible rule. They need to go back and kind of reconfigure some things because at this point, it's like you can't even touch the quarterback. It's kind of, I mean, you might as well just put 2 hands on him and just call it call it dead, call a play dead. And I was watching probably a couple weeks ago after I think it was the Tom Brady weekend where he got that ridiculous call on him where they called roughing the passer because he got swung down too hard, basically is what it was. And it's just like, I mean, just I don't know what the NFL is trying to accomplish there other than obviously to keep the quarterback on the field, but it's just like it's going too far at this point, and they really need to kind of reconfigure some things and work with that. And I don't think reviews answer to that because I think we reviewed pass interference calls, and that was just a train wreck, and it was just unnecessary. So, but other than that, the defense, I think we kind of hinted at this in our preview as far as being able to stop this kind of weird quarterback run majority offense, and the Cowboys had their struggles with that yet again. But I'm not too concerned because it's not every week that you're going to run into that style of offense. I heard DeMarcus Lawrence talking about after the game where Justin Fields kind of put some things on tape that he can go back now and look at and correct going forward.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to kind of seeing that, next time we play the Eagles or, so many of these other running quarterbacks that we might have to face.
Yeah, and Lawrence lost contain a couple times on Fields and allowed him to get into space where Fields beat him to the outside. And I think that's what DeMarcus was talking about. But overall, pass rush is still able to generate 21 pressures. Looking at the pressure leaderboard for the week, Dante Fowler was outstanding yesterday. He led the team with 4 pressures. Jaron Kearse had 3. 2 from Oso Odigizua. Odigizua, Dante Fowler, Jaron Kearse, and DeMarcus Lawrence all tallied sacks. Chauncey Golson had that 1 pressure. Dorrance Armstrong had 3. Parsons had a little bit of a quieter day with 3, but I mean, I don't know what Micah has to do to get a holding call these days, but it's absolutely asinine that Micah has only drawn 2 holding penalties this year when I feel like I see him get held 4 to 5 times a game, probably more than that, honestly. But yeah, the pass rush was effective. They got to Justin Fields. They made him sweat a lot of the time, and it was definitely a solid performance by the pass defense and the pass rush. But it was a little bit of a struggle in the run game. But also, you have to consider, and I saw this talked about on Twitter today. It's a very real thing when you're inviting teams to run the ball. And Dallas, I feel like, was inviting the Bears to run the ball because, hey, we're up multiple possessions, and the Bears never changed their game plan. I didn't understand it. Maybe it has to do with they don't really trust Fields to throw the ball when they're down, but the Bears just kept trying to run the ball and run the ball and run the ball. And Dallas was like, all right, you can run the ball all the way down the field. You can run the ball all the way down the field for all we care. That's going to take way too much time because we're up by 2-3 possessions. You're not going to make up that time. So I do think Dallas was doing a little bit of exchanging yards for time off the clock, and it was working. But yeah, the run defense I'm a little concerned about. I was encouraged by what we saw from Jonathan Hankins. I thought he did a good job. And I noticed him multiple times, and man, he's a big fella, and I think he's going to help with this run defense in the middle of the defensive line.
Yeah, and just one quick note going back to Parsons real quick. I believe he only played like 65% of the snaps. So I just wonder how much of that was kind of not giving Parsons the week off, but kind of limiting his load heading my week, making sure that he can get kind of rest up, heal up, and get ready for Green Bay coming out of the bye week in a couple of weeks. So I think that was part of his quiet day on percent of the snaps. But like I said, with the run game, with the run defense, like I said, they part of that probably was kind of exchanging the yards for time of possession. But honestly, I just think those type of offenses are just tough. I mean, I know I was watching that game, like I was like, I can't imagine how frustrating it is to go against a quarterback like Justin Fields because you know he's going to run it, but you just can't touch you can't touch him, you can't catch him. And I know that felt good for DeMarcus Lawrence on that 2-point version where he just
Yeah,
came right
yeah.
through and just laid
He
him out.
laid
And it was
him
just
out.
like, I was like, okay, yeah, DeMarcus Lawrence is sick of this. And he finally was able to get a good shot on him. But I just can't imagine how frustrating it is as a defender to just have to chase this dude around all the time. And then Justin Fields is not a small dude either. He's not like a Russell Wilson or Kyler Murray running around. This dude's a big dude, and he's
Yeah.
just as fast as some of those smaller guys. So overall, I'm not giving them a pass for the defense, but I think there's a lot of factors in play that wouldn't happen on a week to week basis. And now we can kind of see, coming out of the bye week, going against Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. I think that's going to be a more true test with this new kind of reconfigured addition with John Hankins out there.
I do think some of it had to do with there was a lot of holding going on that was uncalled. Um, where there was a lot of those big runs were on cutbacks where the linebackers are getting held up and like they can't like get back and fill in their lanes. I remember it was on the one of the Khalil Herbert touchdown runs where I was just like, what are we doing here? What are we doing? Like, I want to say Van Der Esch and Barr both were trying to fight back across their blockers and they both got held, and it just was not a very well officiated game yesterday. And the Cowboys won by 20 despite pretty awful officiating. But yeah, it was definitely a little bit of frustrating day. But one point on Micah Parsons before we move on and talk about the secondary was back-to-back weeks, just unbelievably freakish plays from Micah Parsons. Last week we had his chase down play against the Lions, chasing down the tight end down to the 1 yard line. Then DeMarcus Lawrence forced the fumble the next play. This week, all in the same play, Micah Parsons was got a pressure on Fields, was held in the process, by the way, chases down the pass that was probably 20 yards downfield, runs all the way down there, recovers the fumble. Justin Fields mysteriously just jumps over Parsons while he's down, and Parsons said he got up to celebrate, and I think they're like, wait, hold on. No one touched you. Go. And Micah runs it all the way back for a touchdown. Like not many. No, I don't think any other player in the league can do that in terms of just like he does things that no one else in the league can do. And that was another example where not many guys can cover that much on one play. And I saw Next Gen Stats put out a tweet that on that one play, between him rushing the passer and him tracking down David Montgomery and picking up the fumble and running it back, he ran, I want to say it was like 96 yards on that one play. And like, that's just, those two plays tell you what Micah Parsons is about. And it's like a teach tape on hustle and effort, like what he does, because that's not normal. That is not normal what Micah was doing. And that play was just back-to-back weeks of just special effort and special hustle. And I think that, like, the defense sees that on film, and like that feeds into their identity. And that, that feeds into this whole mantra of playing hard, and it makes everybody better. Like, that's just like when you're the leader of your defense is doing that, everybody's going to follow. And that was just a freakish play by Micah, and kind of hilarious that Fields jumped over him. And like all Fields had to do was get a knee, a cleat spike on him, something. And he jumped right clean over him, and Micah ran it back. It's just an unbelievable play by Micah Parsons.
Yeah, and honestly, like when I was watching it on the replay, it was like almost that he kind of unintentionally kind of timed his getting up right, because how many times do you see a defender recover a fumble and they're hopping right up? He kind of stayed down there for a minute. He was kind of on his knees, and I think he saw the momentum of Justin Fields coming, and Justin Fields just, like you said, just hops right over him and doesn't touch him, and then he runs in for a touchdown. And then I saw a funny quote from Micah Parsons after the game where he was just saying, man, I didn't think I was gonna make it. I was so tired. After, it makes sense. With on one specific play, by the year be tired. But like you said, outstanding play, outstanding awareness. And, I was glad to see Micah Parsons get in the end zone. Although Dak Prescott didn't seem as thrilled because then he's like, all right, now, he's going to want to carry on offense now. So I think that's going to be
Yeah.
something to monitor maybe later down the road. Maybe we get a Micah Parsons carry, but unbelievable play, unbelievable effort. And, it's kind of expected at this point from Micah Parsons.
Yeah, I think McCarthy and Dak both said something to the effect of oh brother, Micah's going to start asking for some touches. And I think Micah said something about it after the game too. But yeah, just really impressive play by Micah. And even on a day he was quieter on pass rush, he still makes an incredible play like that. But yeah, the whole defense, and we'll get into the secondary. But I do want to make this point. I don't think the bye week could be coming at a better time for this team. They're just really nicked up across the board. Connor McGovern's been banged up. He could use the week off. Zeke could use the week off. Dalton Schultz could use the week off. I'm sure there's a couple other names I'm forgetting on the offense. But then on the defense, you look at the laundry list of injuries they're dealing with. Jaron Kearse keeps getting banged up. He got banged up yesterday. Donovan Wilson got banged up yesterday. Malik Hooker missed yesterday's game with a hamstring issue. Anthony Barr got injured yesterday. And we'll get into Damone Clark here in a second. Who got his first action of the season. Anthony Brown got banged up yesterday. Am I forgetting anyone? There's several players that could really. Oh, Micah Parsons could use a week off. He just seems a little tired. He just seems a little tired. There's several guys on this defense that really, really, really needed this week off, and it's coming at a really good time for them.
Yeah, I mean, what else can you say about it? I mean, this team is banged up. I mean, seeing Micah Parsons hobbling all around, on a consistent basis, and he's looking like out there, every other play, he's kind of something is, bothering him or whatever, but, he's playing through it. But, getting this week off, getting the time to heal up, and then, who knows, after tomorrow kind of gives you that energy. And I believe I saw a quote, it was from Micah, but he was just like, this bye week is important. It's about rest. It's about recovery and, not taking it lightly and making sure that you come back ready to go because like Micah Parsons always says, there's a bigger thing that this team is playing for. They put themselves in a really good position at 6-2. And, what more can you ask for at this point? But definitely coming out of the bye week, I mean, it's going to be go time. I mean, you're going to have the Thanksgiving game in there with a short week and then, the extended week on the back end. But, it's going to be a really important time. And this is where, teams start really figuring out who they are around Thanksgiving. So we're still about 3 weeks away from that. But now we're getting down to crunch time and, some important football is going to be played. So you definitely want to be as healthy as you can be, which the Cowboys are definitely not right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's just it's a well-timed bye week for sure. And then you get healthy and ready to go for the trip to Lambeau where they're going to catch a struggling Packers team. But I did not anticipate the Cowboys. I assume they're going to be favored in that game. I did not anticipate them being favored in Lambeau, but here we are. And I think I may have mentioned this on a previous show, but I am really excited for that game because I am going to that game. I'm driving up from old Missouri with my best friend who is a diehard Packers fan. So that should be an interesting experience. It'll be my first time at Lambeau. I'm really excited for the next time the Cowboys take the field. But yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. But let's talk about the secondary real quick. Then let's get out of here. I thought, looking at the coverage numbers, Anthony Brown was the lowest graded player in coverage, but he only gave up 2 receptions on 4 targets for 12 yards and 1 touchdown. Kelvin Joseph played a little bit. He struggled. Looking at the other numbers, Trevon Diggs got a really nice coverage rate of 70.9. He was targeted 5 times, gave up 4 catches for 62 yards. He also had a PBU and should have had an interception, but that's neither here nor there. And then Deron Bland targeted 5 times, gave up 4 catches for 25 yards. He had a PBU. He was really good yesterday, really improved. With Jordan Lewis out for the rest of the year, they're really going to need Deron Bland to play really, really well. I thought they missed Malik Hooker yesterday. He'd been outstanding on the back end all year. But again, Izzy Mukwamu, we got a little bit of Marquise Bell as well. I thought those guys stepped in and did a nice job without him for sure. But yeah, Deron Bland jumped out to me for sure. Deron Bland was really strong yesterday, and they're going to need him to be playing well going forward.
Yeah, I was really curious coming into this show to kind of see how Anthony Brown graded, and it doesn't surprise me that he was the lowest graded player despite only really giving up the 2 catches for 12 yards, because there was a couple of times where either if Justin Fields made a better throw where he didn't underthrow him, but he was toast a couple of different times and it just wasn't completed. But I did not think it was, I'm a guy that
was he the corner on that deep ball to Velus Jones where it hit Velus Jones in the hands? It was up the right sideline.
Yeah.
Was that okay? Yeah. You're right. He was toast a couple times. He hasn't been awful this year, but they're going to need him to be better, especially without Jordan Lewis.
Yeah, and I was just like, I'm the biggest, put some respect on Anthony Brown's name. In the past, I think he's become like a punching bag for, Cowboys Twitter and Cowboys fans and different things like that. But yesterday, he deserved the kind of the punches that he was getting, the little shots he was taking. I didn't think he was good yesterday at all. And it seemed like every time Justin Fields took a shot down the field that he was the target and he was trailing, and and I think he even got away with a slight pass interference on one of the incomplete balls that he did get as well. So, like I said, not a strong game from him. And I think this is important because I think going forward, we already know obviously who Trayvon Diggs is. But, to your point earlier in the show about possibly being a corner, the tape that Anthony Brown put out there yesterday, I think it's going to be something to monitor going forward, because I think teams are going to see that and they're like, okay, this guy is he's going to be really physical down the field. It's going to be borderline pass interference. And if you run into the wrong referee staff, you're going to get called for that. Otherwise, you're just going to have a big play. And I know the Packers, the offense is struggling, just looking ahead a little bit. The offense is struggling, but they will take shots down the field. They haven't really connected on many so far this year. But Anthony Brown could be a target of that, in 2 weeks when they take on the Packers.
Yeah, absolutely. They things are getting a little thin at corner. And again, that's why this bye week is coming at a really, really good time. But yeah, they're going to need Brown to be a little bit better. I thought the linebackers were solid in coverage. I thought Van Der Esch had another really strong game. Anthony Barr went down with the hamstring issue, and sounds like they've avoided a serious injury. And because of that injury, we got a lot of Damone Clark yesterday. So much for easing him back in his first game after spinal fusion surgery. Played 40 snaps yesterday, and he was really good. He was their 5th highest graded defender on the day. I was really excited to see Damone Clark out there, and I might go back and I'm gonna have to go back and watch some of the tape, because he checked out really well grade wise. I want to see more of it, because I was surprised by how much he played. I know part of it had to do with Anthony Barr getting hurt, but going forward, Damone Clark's role is going to be really interesting. I'm really curious to see how this plays out. But yeah, I thought yesterday was a pretty strong day from the linebackers, and just generally, the defense was. I think they were better than that 29 points indicated, just because that sequence of the roughing the passer on Golston, that literally swung the whole game, and it was almost indirectly caused a 10-point swing towards Chicago. So I don't think the defense was as bad as 29 points indicates yesterday. And one other note as we wrap this up was Tristan Hill, who'd been playing really well, was a healthy scratch. I thought that was really curious, given it's a couple days before the trade deadline, and we know that they tried to trade him during camp. Thought it was interesting that he was a healthy scratch after Neville Gallimore had been the healthy scratch. And I think Hill had played better than Gallimore recently. So I'm curious to see what goes on there. Maybe Hankins taking the snaps, but I'm really interested to see if they do anything at the deadline, because there's been a lot of whispers and a lot of things that indicate that they might be, trying to get something done. But yeah, I'm interested to see how this shakes out with the trade deadline, because I was very curious that Tristan Hill was a healthy scratch yesterday.
Yeah, I thought some of Jerry Jones's quotes were kind of interesting after the game as well, saying that, if I can get my hands on something that's worth going for, I'm going to do it. He thinks, and I kind of took that as, he thinks his team is worth it. I think he definitely kind of wants to go all in. Now we'll see how much pushback he gets from Stephen Jones. We kind of know who Stephen Jones is at this point. And if it involves draft picks and getting rid of him, he's not necessarily, for that, unless it is like a 6th rounder that they gave up for Hankins, and, where you recover a 7th rounder. So I think that's going to be interesting. I'm excited for tomorrow because I
Mm-hmm.
definitely want to see this team, whether it's receiver, cornerback, whatever they do. I just want to kind of see another move because we saw the Eagles come out and make a move immediately for Robert Quinn right after we got Hankins. So I felt like that was kind of like a shot at the Cowboys, like, okay, well, kind of take this kind of thing. So I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. Hopefully it's not a letdown. I kind of feel like in my bones that the Cowboys are going to pull something off
I do
tomorrow. I
too.
don't know if
I
it,
do too.
I don't know if it's going to be as flashy as I kind of want it to be, but I feel something coming. So we'll kind of see and monitor kind of what's going on with that.
Yeah, just reading the tea leaves and stuff we've been hearing, and just generally how like they're normally like really quiet, but there's been a lot of buzz about it, and it sounds like they're not leaving any stone unturned with receiver. I think you and I both agree. I think something's coming tomorrow. I don't know that it's going to be some super splashy trade. I don't know that it's going to be Brandon Cooks, but um, I think something's coming tomorrow, and I might look stupid by tomorrow if they don't do anything. But just reading the tea leaves, it really sounds like they might do something tomorrow. So we'll see how trade deadline shakes out. But yeah, really solid day. Hard to complain. The Giants lost, so the Cowboys are in second place at 6-2, heading into the bye week. You got anything else before we get out of here, Corey?
No, that was it. One interesting note that I did see, this is the last thing I have, but I was looking at the NFC standings, and the Washington football team, or the Washington Commanders, excuse me, they are 4-4. They are technically tied with the San Francisco 49ers. If somehow Seattle or San Francisco drop off and the Rams don't get it together, and who else is in that division? Why am I drawing a blank on that? San Francisco, Seattle, Los Angeles, whatever the case is. My point is that the NFC East
Arizona.
is really dangerously Arizona. Yeah, they're trash. But they are dangerously close to having 4 teams in the playoffs, which is absolutely crazy. So that's just something I noticed today while
That's
looking at the
chaos.
standings, and I think that would be pretty cool if we had like a 14 NFC, all 4 teams in the NFC East make the playoffs, because I think with Dak Prescott back at quarterback, I mean, that could set up for the perfect run for this football team. And it would be really interesting because, especially if like Atlanta somehow finds a way to win the NFC South and going against that team in a first
Yeah.
game playoff scenario, I mean, that would be a perfect match. Go into maybe there's an upset, get another NFC East team in round 2 and the game or something of that realm. That would be, I think, pretty encouraging because Dak Prescott obviously owns this division. So I just thought that was interesting. I wanted to bring it up before
Yeah.
we got out of here. But my
Yeah.
antennas are up now that Washington has won 3 games in a row.
Yeah, it'll be the first time in NFL. It would be the first time in NFL history all 4 teams in a division made the playoffs, and yeah, that would be the NFC is really weird this year, man. It's
It's
really
upside
strange.
down.
So we'll see how things shake out, but obviously, we have our sights set on the division. We want to keep pace with Philly, and it's going to take a lot given how soft their schedule is. I get sick every time I see Philly's upcoming schedule. I mean, they should be like 11-0 or 12-0 here in a month or two. It's insane. But
It's
you know,
ridiculous.
what are you going to do? All the Cowboys can do is just keep winning, and hopefully that Christmas Eve game means something. So as we get out of here, thank you guys for listening. Make sure to check out everything we're doing at the Dallas Sports Fanatic at DallasSportsFanatic.com. I'll have my offensive and defensive reviews up this week. Check us out on Twitter at Cowboys News 365 and at Dallas_Fanatic. And check our Instagram out at DAL Cowboys Fanatic, and get me on Twitter at Nate_Sanch77. And you can get Corey on Twitter at the Mr. Douglas with 2 S's. Thank you guys for listening. We will talk to you next time on the Silver and Blue Podcast.